G'day, Jinx here, and welcome to my third tutorial for DoomTools, and this time we're going to talk about DecoHack. Whoa, the magic stuff now. DecoHack is basically a program language that is human readable that allows you to create dehacked files or DEH files. So what is that? So basically, in the early days of Doom, when they first started modding and they wanted to, I want a new gun or I want a new type of monster behavior, the way they did that was by like hex editing, because they were insane and incredibly skilled. But they basically edited the old executable files, and that's the way you do it, by physically changing the executable file. So when it says play monster sound X or whatever, it does something else, or it plays that sound at a different point when it's supposed to, by changing the executable, changing the way the program functions. This was done by hacking the executable file itself, DoomExe. That is why if you go to ID Games and download really old WADs, they often come with their own executable files, because the process in the old days of doing the hack was incredibly hard for starters, and then even applying it was a bit of a fiddly thing. So they just packaged the exes with the WADs. Now, as the modding community got more and more sophisticated, these hacked executables became patch files or .deh files. You know how you type -wad to load up your WAD? You type -deh and you can load up the patch file. And what that does is actually patch the exe just like in the old days, except it does it in memory. So it doesn't physically alter the file itself. It does it all in memory now. Once we started making proper, fancy source ports like we've got now, we actually embed the dehacked file as a dehacked lump, and the engine reads that lump and patches it for us. So if you download a fancy WAD and it's got new weapons, or it's got, new monsters, and it's not made in UZDoom, because UZDoom has its own incredibly advanced scripting functions, then it's done with a dehacked file. So all the really fancy ones that are not UZDoom, it's all done with dehacked. And so it's really the core of the advanced modding community is dehacked. And a lot of that modding community has moved into using DecoHack because it just makes it so much easier to do. So let's just have a quick look. Eviternity II, which is a very famous mod you probably know. This thing here is a dehacked lump, and you can see it's just a text file basically that has all the code that's saying do this and that, and it's not very readable. But DecoHack, because they include, a lot of modders include their DecoHack now inside the WAD to allow people to understand how the WAD was constructed. Make sure you check with the text file that the WAD comes with, because some mods say you're welcome to use anything in my WAD, and other ones like Eviternity II, you have to ask explicit permission to use anything. But even so, they have included the DecoHack, so you can see an advanced DecoHack, and you can see it's just basically a human readable version of, I say human readable, but you still need to understand how DecoHack works. It is a programming language in a way. It's still a lot easier to read than the dehack code itself. And that's basically what DecoHack does. It allows you to use a lot of advanced things. You can make aliases, you can do all these different functions. It's got all these different abilities like a programming language, but it will then produce for you the actual dehack lump, which physically does the alterations that are required. Fancy mods use this. Right, I'm almost finished the introduction, I swear. But before I start, I just want to say that I am not a super advanced dehacked user, and therefore I'm not a super advanced DecoHack user. When I make mods, I am usually just doing levels and graphics, because graphics is my professional background. And there are some projects around Doomworld that you can find, like the MBF 21 Monster Beastery, where you can just pull ready-made monsters and place them in your WADs, right? And you still need to do all the DecoHack to get that to work. So that is kind of how my experience with DecoHack works, by utilizing DecoHack assets that are made by other people in my own WADs that I've been allowed to use. So I use DecoHack, but I am not super advanced in making DecoHack stuff, So this tutorial is not going to get bogged down in how to program in DecoHack. It's not an instruction on how to use DecoHack. It's an instruction on how DecoHack integrates into the DoomTools project and into your pipeline to create your WADs. That's what it's focused on. But if you are interested in more in how the mechanics of Decorate itself works, the first place to go is the DoomTools website. So you click on the DecoHack, because remember, DoomTools is just a series of small command line applications that are kind of bundled together to make the tools. DecoHack is the one we're looking at, and there's a big, massive help file here. It tells you all about it. It tells you how it works. It tells you this is your first stop in understanding how to program the physical programming part of the DecoHack. But what is interesting is, if you go up the top, it says it's a Decorate-like language. So Decorate was a scripting language introduced by ZDoom, famous in GZDoom and now UZDoom, that is depreciated because it's been replaced by ZScript. But because it was the way to do it for so long, there's quite a lot of information on Decorate. Now, DecoHack and Decorate aren't exactly the same, but as it says in the DecoHack help, they are similar. I don't know this, but I think that Emtrop used Decorate as the base of when he started this project, and then it sort of evolved. Then the programming evolved into something unique, which became Decorate. But what I'm trying to get here is that Decorate itself, because it was the standard for so long, there's a lot of information on the internet on how to use Decorate. So if you're really stuck, you can actually go look at Decorate examples, Decorate tutorials, and it's not hard to take that information and convert it into how to use DecoHack. For example, if I go to, ZDoom Decorate, there's all these links and there's heaps of information just on the ZDoom wiki. Realm 67 is a repository of publicly available assets for Doom and Hexen and everything. So if we go to the Doom style beastry, for example, click on the abandoned monster. This stuff here, all these monsters and assets on this site are supplied with Decorate code, which then you need to convert to DecoHack, but it gives you an idea of how everything works. And also on the ZScript wiki, like say if I type in Lost Soul, and I go to the Lost Soul page, not only do they have the ZScript definition, right? They have the depreciated Decorate definition. This is the Decorate definition of the Lost Soul itself. And they've got this for every single actor in the entire game on this wiki. So if you're really stuck, there's so much information on Decorate, which is the depreciated UZDoom thing, and it's very, very similar to DecoHack. So while this tutorial is going to gloss over how to physically code in DecoHack, the information you need to do that coding is found on the DoomTools DecoHack help page. And then for more sort of generalized ideas, you can look up Decorate itself, which is a very similar language. Right, so let's get into this. So the first thing we're going to do is create the DoomTools project itself. Now I'm going to be using the UI to do this. So we just go Tools, doommake, New Project. We're going to select WAD. We're going to grab our project path, which for me is DecoHack tutorial project. And what I like to do is I like to just enable everything. And that way, if I choose to add stuff, I've got it all set up. Like if you don't have it ticked, then you don't have the option. So I'm just, unless you manually create the directory. So I'm just going to tick everything. And where it says, will it use a dehack patch? We're obviously going to say yes, using DecoHack. Now there is this thing here, yes, using a different editor like WAC-ED or DEH 9000 or whatever. So what these are basically visual editors that allow you to edit the executable in a visual way and save out DEH files. So it's just another way of making DHACK files. Now, it is more reminiscent with the old way things were done. Okay. Now, this is still a very, very good program, and a lot of people just use this because it's well documented and people know what it does. And there's a whole host of these kind of apps you can choose from. And what they do is they save out a .deh file, which then doommake, when it's creating your project, when it's creating your WADs, can actually just read that file. And that way you don't have to use DecoHack at all. But we're going to talk about DecoHack, obviously, so we're going to be using DecoHack. I'm just going to say textures with boom extensions, and I'm going to say no to version control and no to the other one. Let's create the project. Yeah, blammo. We'll call it DoomTools Tut 03 DecoHack. Blammo, and I'll just browse to my Doom 2 WAD. I'm using the Doom 2 WAD that came with Kex Doom. Okay, so here's the first choice you have. Now this is something you can change later, but basically it's asking you what patch type you want. These are the patch types got listed here. So there's Doom 1.9, Ultimate Doom 1.9, Doom Unity, Boom, MBF, Extended, MBF 21, DSD-Hacked, and ID24. Now what these are just different types of patches. So Doom 1.9 allows you to do pure vanilla kind of editing for chocolate or whatever. Boom, which was like the first really big modder-centric format that came out that I know of. And there's MBF 21, which is an extension of Boom, and there's Extended, blah, 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 blah. Probably the big one that you want to look at is MBF 21. So MBF 21 is basically supported by nearly every single source port in existence. If you are looking for maximum compatibility, MBF 21 is a really good place to go. If you're looking for the most advanced one at the moment, it's probably DSD-Hacked. Now, DSD-Hacked, what makes these patches different is that they expose more of the executable's functions. That's all. So if you use DDSE-Hacked, it allows you to fiddle with a code pointer that a previous patch didn't have access to. That's all the difference is. So DDS-Hack has more options, but it's less compatible. It's still very well supported. I mean, all the DeSATA stuff, Wolf supports it, you know, so there's lots of things support it. You know, UDoom, even Kex Doom supports it. And finally, you have ID24. Now, ID24 is the proprietary mapping standard that was introduced in Kex Doom. Kex Doom, by the way, is Doom plus Doom 2, the official ID Doom that came out recently. When it came out, Night Dive also created their own mapping standard. Now, this is very well documented, but it's also, as far as I know, not as supported as the other ones. It is a very advanced format though. Anyway, so basically for the highest compatibility, I'd choose MBF 21, and the most options, I'd choose DDSD-Hacked. And if you want to do like a pure vanilla, of course, you'd use Doom 1.9 or Ultimate Doom. Now, what's interesting is these are basically just telling it how to set up the initial includes for your coding. These are completely modular. You can change these at any point during your project and produce patches of different types. In fact, really advanced mods actually contain multiple different hacks if they want to. And one of the cool things about DecoHack is that it can output to any of these. It's sort of a universal converter, I guess you'd call it. Like I said, the only real difference is that the DDS-Hack has exposed more of the executable's abilities, which means that any hack that is common to both hacks or to all the hacks between Doom 1.9 and DDS-Hack, you can output your DecoHack to any of those patching formats. But if you're using a DDS-Hacked pointer that is only available inside that hack type, you will obviously not be able to use that in a Doom 1.9 hack because it doesn't exist there. So while DecoHack can output these different formats, you still need to be aware that you're using valid hacks that are available in every format that you want to export. For the demo, we're just going to use DDS-Hack, DSD-Hacked. And this is changeable later, so it doesn't really matter. And that's it. So here is our new raw DoomTools project. And if I go into the SCR, which is where you put all your stuff, you'll see that there is a little folder called DecoHack. Probably helps if I sort it by name. And in DecoHack, it's already given us a main.dh. So if I just edit that, load that up in Notepad. But you can see here that it's included the DDS hacked information, and it's also included something called friendly. My understanding is that friendly is basically just a namespace that allows you to use all the different aliases that Mtrop has set up for you. And I'll talk about what that is later. And because this is the include, you can change this. So I can just change this to MBF21, for example, and that will change the patch type. So that's how it comes in all ready to go. So let's just actually build the dir. So I'm just going to go to the root of my folder, open up a command prompt, and I'm going to type in doommake. And boom, it outputs everything we need. And now if I go into the build dir, you can see that it's produced all the different WAD data that the doommake build project function does. And one of the things it's done is produced a decohack.dh. So this is our entire DecoHack script. How that's different to the main.dh doesn't look different here because we've got such a simple main.dh. But in the main.dh, you can include a lot of different things. You can write all your own code, like say you're doing like a new reverent, you can have just a code called reverent.dh and include it into the main. But the decohack.dh file that's added to your project will have everything combined into a single script called decohack.dh. And that is the script that you include in your WAD on release, right? Instead of having like hundreds of different small files. Also, you can see that it's actually added the DEH file itself, okay? Which in this case is just saying the version of Doom and stuff. Now, what is interesting is if I load up Slade and load our WAD, you can see that there's nothing really in it, but it has actually included a dehacked lump, even though it's basically empty. And the lump dehacked isn't additive. And what that means is if you load up this WAD and then you load up something in front of it or behind it, it's only going to use the dehacked lump in the last WAD loaded in the command line. So it's just something to keep aware that if you enable DecoHack in your DoomTools settings when you're starting your project, it's always going to add a dehacked lump into your WAD, even if it's basically empty. You can, of course, just delete them out if you want, but it's just something to be aware that projects that have no DecoHack in it, if you've told DoomTools to make it a DecoHack project, it will add this. And if I actually delete this main DH, I'll just copy it out to back it up. If I actually delete this DH and then try and do a doommake, it's going to error because the build script is expecting to find that. Now, there are some ways around this. At the end of this tutorial, I'm going to talk a little bit about doommake scripting to add your own build functions to your doommake. So you can have one that doesn't automatically do DecoHack, but you can see that at the moment it's erroring because it's looking for that main file, which isn't there, okay? So that's just something to be very aware of, that if you're starting a project and you just wanted to add DecoHack, but then you decide I'm not going to use it, it's still going to be placing a dehacked lump inside your finished WAD, which you'll either need to remove manually or, you know, start your project without that option. See, now that I've moved the main back, I can build the WAD. Now, I like using Notepad, but DecoHack actually has its own editor. So if you go to your root, load up a command prompt, and if I type in DecoHack -- help, you'll get a number of commands. And one of them is the GUI. So I just write DecoHack --GUI. And this loads up DecoHack. And because I ran that command from inside my project folder, it's got my whole project directory structure here, which I find very, very handy. Now, if you go into, you can actually run the patches here to export. And it's got a lot of interesting things. One of the cool things is if you go to editor preferences, you have a font size. Make it 22 font size to make it nice and big for the YouTube video. Now, so we go to source, we go to DecoHack and just click on main, and you can see our DECHACKED main thing. So when it's compiling, it's going to look for main and compile from there. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just type in auto thing. Now the way things work is that they need numbers, and you don't want to overwrite things, but DecoHack has a thing called auto thing, which will basically automatically assign a free value to it for you, so you don't have to keep track of it. And one of the great things about DecoHack is that it uses aliases. You can set up all your own aliases. So like if you create a new type of fireball and it has all this stuff, you know, like it hits you, it bounces off walls, it splits into different things, whatever you make it do, you can actually just give it a name, My Awesome Fireball, and you can reference that. So instead of having to rebuild this and use all these complicated things, you can just use the alias for it, and that equals that entire code block. So you never need to remember specific numbers and like weird codes. You can give everything human readable variables to represent what you're talking about. I'm going to create a new copy of the Lost Soul. I'm going to call this Lost Soul low. Okay. And then I'm going to put in a colon. Now this is basically, if you know a bit about C++ and inheritance, this is what's going on here. We're going to copy the existing Lost Soul. So if I type in thing, I now need to put in something here to tell it to inherit from the Lost Soul. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. Let's go back to our command prompt, and I'm just going to type DecoHack --help, and you can see there's these things called dumps. So dump constants is what we're going to look at, but these will dump information that you can use in here. It's like a way of quickly accessing the API in inverted commas. Okay, so if we type DecoHack --dump constants, it outputs this huge list of all the human readable names for all the various functions and thing objects inside Doom, and it tells you where they're coming from. This is a huge list. There's a lot of double ups, you know, because a lost soul in one patch is the same as a lost soul in another patch. But if you put a little greater than sign here and just type in a text file, so I'm going to call this constants. Oh, actually, let's put it inside the DecoHack folder. Windows uses the wrong slashes. Whatever. So we just cd to the DecoHack there, and we're going to do it here. So we're going to go DecoHack --dump constants, and we're just going to do greater than sign, and we're going to type in dh constants.dump. And now if we go into that directory, you can see we have a text file with all those hacks here, and I can search. So I can go Control F, lost, and you can see it's number 19. Okay, so this would be thing 19, and that's how I can copy it. But the thing is, this constants file is more than just a little map. It actually gives you the human readable names. So if I just come down, and here we have Lost Soul, which is mapped to 19. So I can just type in lost, what is it? Capital. Lost Soul. And that is the same as writing 19. And that's the way DecoHack uses all these aliases to make it a lot easier to write things. But it's even more powerful than that. So instead of looking that up, I can just type lost and hold Control and press spacebar, and it will bring up a code completion box. This is telling us that it has found the Lost Soul alias, and it gives us a little bit of information here about how that particular thing functions. So we're just going to double click on that, and boom, it's already done for us. Very, very, very handy. If you're in Windows, you can just type in the constants file that outputs everything into the command line, but you can then actually just type in find string /i, which makes it case insensitive, and we'll just put in lost. Bam, and it can see that it prints out just the ones we need. And of course, you can also just output that lost constants.dump as well if you want a list of just those particular constants. Okay, and because that is just a very, very simple command line, you can have a batch file to do it for you. Anyway, so easiest thing to do, of course, is just to use the code completion by pressing CTRL+spaceBar inside the DeHack editor that Mtrop has written for us, or his team. I'm actually not really sure if I think he does everything himself. What a freak. Well, actually, I do know that the DecoHack editor particularly uses some pretty advanced libraries from a guy called Bobby the Light, you know, like the autocomplete and the text edits and stuff like that. So big thanks to him as well. And then I'm just going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Lost Soul Low Health. And then I'm just going to give it open brackets, close brackets, and I'm just going to type in here health 5. Okay, and save that. Now you do have the patch here. You can just export the patch manually. You can see that it's basically going into the root of my thing. I don't want it to go in there. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to go into my project. I'm going to go into build. And I'm just going to select that. Okay, so if I just hit export, bammo, it's going to export the dehacked.deh. Okay, so if I come back into my folder, I go into my build, you can see the dehacked file is there. So this is the physical lump that contains my new lost soul. And you can see it's done all the other stuff for me. But we're using DoomTools, so I'm just going to go back into my root of my folder, and I'm just going to type in doommake. And this is going to run the complete output and do everything for us. So if I come in here, I go into my build, I now have the asset.wad. It's created the DecoHack DH, which is the combined DecoHack files from all your includes in a single file, which you can then bundle in your WAD. That's what that thing in Eviternity was, to allow people to see what you've done. And that's because these includes can actually split your stuff up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into DeHack, and I'm actually going to get rid of this. I'm going to make a new file, new blank file, and I'm going to paste it in there, and I'm going to save this as lostlow.dh, and in main I'm going to include that as well. Hash include, and this time I'm going to make opening closing brackets. I'm just going to call this lost_low. Oh, sorry, I need to put low.dh. And now if I just rebuild my project and I come in here, you can see the entire DecoHack project, as in the main DH file and any of the DH files that I've included, is written into this single combined DecoHack.eh file, and at the same time outputted to the actual dehacked lump for the entire project that you will load with your WAD. So I can actually go new folder, and I'll call this monsters. Let's get rid of those two dump files so they're not confusing people. And I'll just move lost into there. And now I'll just quickly get rid of that to make it easy to write. I'll just put / my custom stuff. And I'm going to go include. And what I'm going to do, because it's in a directory here, I'm just going to type in ./monsters/lostlow.dh. Control-S. I'm just going to remake my project. If I go to my builder, you can see the DEH file. It's basically identical. And that's really handy, so you can have a really neat directory structure with all your different stuff, and you can work on individual things without having a big, gigantic, 10,000 line script to work on, but it'll output that massive script that you can then share with other people in a single file or a single lump inside your WAD. Okay, so if I actually load up Slade and I load up my build WAD, which in this case is DTut03 WAD, you can see there's not much in it at the moment, but it does contain automatically the dehacked lump, and it also has my full DecoHack file. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to load up Doom Builder and show you some integration with Doom Builder. So we're just going to go File, New Map. We're going to make an MBF21 map, and I'm going to add as a resource as a WAD file the DT-tut-wad. Okay, that's where our DecoHack file is, and just enter that. So I'm just going to quickly make a, I'll just make this small so it's easier for you guys to see what's going on again. So I'm just going to put a thing in here, so make a little person, and let's put in, I'll just type in lost, and you can see it now says lost soul, low health. But you'll notice there's only one lost soul, right? We wanted to make a copy. We've actually edited the original. So if I just get rid of that filter, you can see they're in the original monsters dir. It's renamed it, right? And if I run this, let me just put -no sound. So if I run this, you can see a single pistol shot, boom, will kill him. So it's working, it's just overriding the original. And that's because if we look at our dehack file for our lost soul, what we've done is we've copied the exact lost soul, okay? So while we've copied all the things required for Doom to run, there are their own little values that we need to put into our DecoHack to instruct Ultimate Doom Builder how to read those things. And one of those things is called EdNum. So EdNum. These are basically like a special type of list, and in this case, we're gonna call this 5,000. Now, I'm not quite sure what the most valid numbers, like the minimum number is to use. When I'm editing, I just start at 5,000. I seem to not have problems. But if you use a number that's lower or different and it corresponds to an existing thing, it'll actually override it. And that's what's happening here. Because we've copied the lost soul, but we only changed the health, we didn't change the EdNum. And because we didn't change the EdNum, even though with this code we've actually created a brand new thing in addition to the original lost soul, when Doom Builder is reading it, it's reading the last entry and it's reading the same ed number as the old lost soul. So it's confusing the two and thinking that our new one, in inverted commas, is the old one because the number we gave it corresponds to the old one. So let's just save this now and we'll go back to Doom Builder. So I just rebuild and I'll just press F8 to reload the map. And now you'll see the lost soul is still here and it's type 3006. But if I type lost into the filter, we now have the lost low health, which is type 5000. So if I run this now, this guy dies in one shot, this guy does not. Okay. Right. So that's basically that. So I'm just going to copy this guy, put a whole bunch of copies here. I'll also add some bullet boxes. I'll also add a chain gun. I'll also add a shotgun. And I'll add some shotgun. Okay, and I'm just going to save this into my DecoHack tutorial. I'm going to go to source. I'm going to save it into maps. I'm going to save it as map01 lost soul demo. Now, it doesn't matter what you name your WAD. The way DoomTools understands what map slot to use is actually through the map options level name here. So if you want this to be map, 5, you just type in map 05. Anyway, let's rebuild this project. And you can see I'm in here. So if I just pick up these, you can see I can just machine gun those guys, but this guy still is the original and takes more damage. Okay, very, very simple. Okay, g'day, a Jinx from the future here, and I was just doing the editing and I just wanted to make something a little bit more clear. See the code that we wrote for the lost soul low, and it's using auto thing and then inheriting from the lost soul. This is creating a new thing, a completely new thing, in addition to the original lost soul. Now, when we had not added the new EdNum, it was sort of overwriting the last one, but that's not how you modify an existing monster. If you don't want to add a new monster, but you want to modify all the old monsters, what you need to do is just call lost soul. So what I've done, I've made another file here called archfile low health. Oops, if I spell it correctly. And you can see here, I've just called archfile, thing archfile. So I just went AR, CTRL+spaceBar, and chose archfile. And this is now modifying the original one and not adding a new thing to the project. So this is the way you actually modify your existing monsters or existing things. So of course in my main.dh, I've just added that monster. And if I now load him up, you can see that he's still showing up in the original monsters. And he's still got but he's got the new name. And apart from that, he's got the same old coloring, and that's modifying all the old monsters. So if I run this, let's make sure it's got no sound. There's all the arch files. Let's just go bam, because they're all got 5 health. Okay, back to the original edit. You can see that there's a lot more. So if I go back into Doom Builder and I just get rid of the filter, you'll see that there's at the bottom here, it says user defined, and that is where the low health is here. But we can define our own categories in the same way DoomMaker here has categories. And you do that by just going // $category. My spelling is atrocious, and we'll just call this monsters. Custom monster. We'll save that. I'll doommake. I'll reload my map. And now, if I go to a thing, you can see I've got a category called custom monsters, and there you can find my low health monster. And you can do a lot of things. If I come in here, you've basically got category, title, color, angel sprite, scale. This is the scale that appears in the editor. It doesn't affect the scale in game. And comment description, whatever. You can set up so it's a lot easier when you're doing your editing. These are just commented out lines that don't affect the DecoHack lump, but they stay in the finished version of the DecoHack lump. So any comment line that is // will be read by Doom Builder, and if that keyword is known to Doom Builder, then it will do whatever you tell it for that particular thing. Like I said, I'm not going to too deep into actually coding. I'm just giving you some standard stuff, okay? So we've basically set up our little lost soul. That's all done. But coming into the command prompt or even using the GUI, you know, to do a doommake can be a little bit cumbersome, right? It's a bit of a hassle, especially if all we want to do is test our coding. So there is a way that DecoHack Editor can handle that for you. And if you go into patch and export patch, where it says select output patch file and output source file, that's the DecoHack source file, the combined one, and the patch file is the actual dehacked lump, you can actually select a WAD. So we're going to select our WAD here that we've got loading into DoomTools, and we're going to select it here for the source, and we're just going to hit export. And what it does, it actually writes those things directly into the WAD itself. So if I go to the lost soul and I change the health to 5,000, save it, make sure I reselect the main one, not have the lost soul one clicked. And then I do the patching into the WADs. I reload in Doom Builder. And I should. Now I have 5,000 health enemies, which are a lot harder for me to kill, obviously. And all I've done is actually update the WAD file itself on the fly. But because the patch files are still saved in my normal directory, if I do, like if I do a completely clean project and remake with a standard doommake, it's still going to create the DecoHack as we expect. So if I load up Slade, load up the file, the changes are replicated there as well because, you know, it's building the thing from scratch. Now, I only did a clean build because I wanted to prove that it was rebuilding the WAD. The way DoomTools works is that it only sort of updates things where the text changes, which means that you don't have to do a clean, you know, doommake clean and run it from scratch. Just any doommake build that builds the DecoHack patch will update the WAD. I only did the clean first because I wanted to delete everything so you could see that it was reading it from our actual source files. That's a really easy way to update your WADs without having to, you know, rebuild everything. You're basically just building and coding and testing it out with a couple of button clicks. So let's just go back to our lost guy and we'll just set that back to 5. Click on the main and do an export. And once again, you can load in here, do a play, and we have the 5% health monsters again. And that's the original lost soul that doesn't die easily. Okay, so that's basically some DeHack integration into your DecoHack file. Now, remember, all the other stuff with DoomTools is still valid. So you remember you've got your source folder, you've got your assets converting, you've got your sounds converting, your textures, it's importing your maps, you know, through your map folder. All that stuff is being done for you, and it's all in an open editable state. And all these functions, like most of this editor here is obviously its own thing, but almost all the functions, like say this patch editor, is actually just sort of a shortcut for the tools inside DoomTools. So if I come down here and I type DoomTools, it lists all the actual programs that it's using to do all this stuff. And one of them is called DecoHack, which I showed a couple of the command line things before, you know, to do the printouts and stuff like that. So if we look at the DecoHack help page, you can see this little example code here. Right? This is telling you what that create patch button inside the DecoHack GUI is actually doing, right? It's running the DecoHack code. It's saying run it on this piece of .deh file, and then it's outputting it to here. And if this was a WAD file, it would be inserting it in. What it's also doing is doing -s, which is output the combined source file. So if I open a command line once again in my root of my project, I'm just going to do a clean to clean out the entire build project there. So there's nothing in there now. I can use the DecoHack. Let's just do DecoHack --help. And you can see it's O for out file and S for outputting source. So all I could need to do is go DecoHack main dot src/DecoHack/main.dh, and then I'm outputting to .build/dehacked.deh, and I'm also outputting the source file to the same spot, /build/decohack.dh. And you can see it's writing out those things. So if I go into the build directory now, you can see that I've got my DH file, and I've also got my combined DecoHack file. And that is basically the same thing that the DecoHack patch export is doing. It's just running that command line. So see how I told it to output a dehacked DEH file and a DecoHack combined DH file. If those outputs actually pointed to a WAD, it would insert it into the WAD. And why would that be important to know how this thing works? Is because this is a command line and it can be created into any kind of bat file you want. Because you'll note that I'm actually just creating the main.dh, right? So if I was working just on a skeleton, I could actually just compile skeleton.dh and not have everything else, like all my guns and everything else, sort of interfering and possibly causing bugs. I could just work solely on the behavior of that one monster with that one DecoHack file. And you can do that from inside the editor as well. So if I just click on lost low and I ran the patch here, it would actually still produce the patch, but it would only be evaluating this one thing. So if I run it from main, it's evaluating the main DH, which includes the lost. The only thing you've got to be careful is, unfortunately, DecoHack cannot handle multiple includes. So this main.dh has the includes here, right? But if I add those includes to lost low as well, it'll give me an error on build. So if I copy these and add them in here, and then I try and patch this, it gives me an error, okay? Because those includes are included twice. So if I do it now, it won't error. But if I try and just build the lost monster itself, right, it'll error because those includes aren't there. So you have to just work on the lost soul thing and nothing else. You'll need to put those includes. So now if I do that patch, it's writing it, and it's only writing this one file. It just happens that when I only write the main.dh, it's including that file. But again, I like to use the command line a lot because it allows me to sort of write my own little tools that use the Doom tools in the way I like to run my own pipeline, right? So because you're just the actual whole of Doom tools is accessible through these small command line activities, you can create your own bat files, especially if you use PowerScript on Windows. You can create quite complicated wrappers to make Doom tools function exactly how you personally want it to work by using the command line abilities. And that's going to bring me to the last section I'm going to be covering in this video, and that is just a little bit about how the DoomMake script works. So I'm just going to open the DoomMake script. This is the build script, and it's quite a little complicated thing. It's basically a bunch of functions and then a bunch of function calls. So when you type DoomMake clean, for example, that little clean is actually part of the DoomMake script, and you can add and create any of your own versions of these DoomMake commands to run from your script. So if I come down here, so here is the little thing called clean. It's target clean, little thing telling you what it does. Check entry clean arguments, so it's taking clean and arguments, and it's running the function do clean. So basically, if you create any of your own little things in here, you can create your own abilities. So for example, doommake, which basically if you run doommake like that, that's the same. I'll just clean again. That's the same as running doommake make. So you can come down here, and here's doommake make, and you can see all the functions that it is actually running when you run that command. So let's make our own little one here. Let's copy the whole of make. I'm going to call this fresh, and we're going to say, let's just put another dot actually here. Cleans entire build. Default make target, create release, doommake. Okay, we'll just get rid of that one. And at the moment, because we've just copied the make ability up to here, it's doing all the same thing. So it's do init, do all, do release, do distribute. Can't speak. Anyway, it does these functions. So if I actually look for the doom all, you can see all the little things it does for doom all, okay? That's actually the function that it's running. And these functions, so let's say do textures, this is the function that actually is doing all the texture stuff. But anyway, so we want to also come up here and find clean, which is somewhere here. Clean, do clean. So we're just going to copy do clean, and we're going to add it to the top of this. So we've made our own Doom script thing called fresh. Oh, we've got to change this to fresh, obviously. And what it's going to do is it's going to run the doom clean function, and then it's going to run all the same commands as the make. So if I save this and I type doom make fresh, and then I go back up, you can see that cleaning build test done. And then after it's done that, it's done a full build. And if I go into the builder now, you can see that it's rebuilt everything. But the important thing is it's done a fresh build, which sometimes you need to do. So that's an example of how you can very easily add your own functions into the Doom script. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you a little setup trick that I do with Doom script, including, I always have this fresh thing in as well, to better utilize, in my opinion, DecoHack with how I like to work. Now, I will have a text file linked in the description of this video that has this information so you can copy and paste this. But basically what I'm going to do is add a new function underneath fresh. I'm going to call this deco. And what this was going to do is create a WAD containing only the dehacked lump, and it's going to be run with DecoHack deco. Okay, so this is the new function that we're going to add, the new build target that we're going to add. And so just like before, we need a check entry, and we're going to call this deco, and we'll just get rid of all that. Okay, so what we need in here is just the patch creation, and we do know what that patch creation is. It's part of do all. So if we search for do all and we come down here, we actually have the do patch command. That is the command that's actually creating the patch files. Let's copy that, And we're going to put in do patch false. First thing it's going to do is create the dehacked.deh and the decohack.dh combined source file. That's what do patch false does. Now we're going to create our own WadMerge script here, and we're going to call it DEHWad. Yeah, I'll go DEHWad. There we are. Okay. Now, DEHWad does not exist. We need to write this, okay? The Doom script works in a top-down manner, which means if I call a function and the function is below where it's being called, it wouldn't have been loaded up yet. We actually need to place the do DEHWad function at the top of the script. So what I'm going to do, let's just find the do all again, okay? And what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to add this to do all. So that was do DEHWad. So whenever I do a full make, it's also going to run my little function, which is making the DEH only WAD. And just so happens that this is the very first check function in the list, and everything above this point here is the are actually the initialization functions. So if we write our new function here, everything's going to work. It's above all the calls. Now, to save time, I'm not going to write all this out. I'm just going to copy it from my existing folder. So I'm just going to paste that in. And what this is a WadMerge function, which is running everything we need it to do to create just the file we want. And I just made this from sort of cobbling together, looking through the thing. And of course, if you go to the DoomTools website, there is the WadMerge tool, which tells you how it all works. And of course, there is the WadScript tool page that tells you how the WadScript works. So basically what I've done is I've created a new WadMerge function that creates a type of WAD, which is only the dehacked lump and nothing else. Then I added that call. I've got to make sure, I think I named it slightly differently. There we are. Boom. Everything's case sensitive. And then I've called that function inside the do all function. So it's added that WAD creation to my normal builds of any time. And I've also created a brand new build target called deco, which just creates the WAD by itself. So let's save that. We'll do a doommake fresh, which will clear the directory and rebuild everything from scratch. Oh wait, one more thing I forgot. If I go into my scriptster, you have these merge.txt files that WadMerge makes. Okay, so you got WadMerge assets, merge mats, merge releases, merge textures. We need to create, because if I come up here, we need to make merge dh only.txt, which is the WadMerge file that we're going to be reading. So I'll just create a text file. And edit that. And once again, I'm just going to paste in the data I require rather than writing it all out. And what this is basically just doing is creating the merge file. So we're creating something, we're merging it in, we're merging this into the file, and we're giving it a lump name dehack, and then we're doing the write out and writing this build. So again, all the information on how WadMerge works is on the page at WadMerge. It's very, very simple. Anyway, whatever. Like I said, these text files are going to be in the description of this video if you just want to copy them. But anyway, so now I've made merge DH only. I can now run a doommake fresh, and it's all done everything we need. And now if you go into my build directory, you can see that there is a new WAD file called dehacked.wad. So if I load that up in Slade, dehacked.wad. It's basically got nothing in it except a dehacked file. Okay, so that's just the dehacked file. And if I go over here and I go doommake clean and then doommake deco and go back into that directory, you can see that's just produced the DecoHack combined source file, the dehacked DEH file, and the dehacked WAD. So let's just do a full make, and we have everything now. And the reason why I like to do this is for Ultimate Doom integration. So let's just load up Ultimate Doom again, and let's load up our map. Now you can see what we've got here is that it's loading Doom2.wad by default, and we've also told it to load up our release file, which is dt-tut03 decohack.wad. And there are many cases where instead of loading up the whole big thing, you might want to only load your the texture wads or wherever you want to do it. In fact, a recent addition to DoomTools, as in literally the new version, and it's not even in the documentation yet, is a new build target called editor. So I'll just load up another command line. And what the editor does, so doommake editor, is it creates an editor-asset.wad. Now, what's interesting is that it creates this asset.wad out of your built dir. So what you need to do is do a doommake. Let's just do a doommake clean. So at the moment, there's nothing in my doom build dir, right? So if I do a doommake editor and I load that up in Slade, it's basically empty, right? But if I do a doommake and then I do a doommake editor, but because the Doom build had already had all the other WADs and parts of your build process completed, now when I load up the asset in Slade, you can see it's got the dehacked, it's got the DecoHack, it's got any, it's got the animations, the switches, it's got any textures, graphics, and this becomes a mapper resource file that you can then send to your mappers, and it has everything in it required for them to do their own levels for your WAD. And that's a really simple way of creating like a stripped down version that hasn't got any of the mapping information. It's just the pure assets WAD for mappers to use. And you can load this up inside Ultimate Doom Builder. So if we just have a quick look at the doommake script like we did before, this is the target editor. That's the one we just ran. And you can see these are the functions that it's doing to create those things. So once again, if you wanted, you could attach this into the end of your normal scripts. For example, if I copied this and I put this in my target in the default doommake make, and I just did that, pasted this in, it's now doing the normal doommake make, plus it's going to finish up by doing that editor asset WAD as well. So if I save that now and I come in here and I do doommake clean, I come into my folder, there's nothing in there, but now I just do doommake. You can see it ends with build the asset WAD. And now we have the asset WAD building every single time. And you can see the difference. The release version of the WAD is 41K, and the asset version of the WAD is only 8K. And of course, if I just close it and reload it, you can see that the asset WAD is there. So that's just another way of creating like a really simple to use and exportable to your friends asset only WAD for use with Doom Builder. But what I like to do is that whatever you choose to load inside your Ultimate Doom Builder after the iWAD, to finish that by loading this dehacked.wad that only contains the dehacked file. So what this means is whatever has been changed in the dehacked.wad will change anything that has been preloaded. So whatever I have in this resource list, I put that dehacked.wad at the very end. Okay, and of course, if it still works. So if I go to a thing, I type in lost, it still has, it's exactly the same. Okay, all this means is that when I'm doing my editing now, and I'm, editing my patch file, I'm editing how my code works and how my dehacked thing works, I can just update with doommake deco, right? And reload with F8, sorry. And I'm able to import those updates into my Doom builder without having to rebuild the entire file. I can actually I can even send, like say I'm working with other people and I've done a modification to the dehacked, I can just send them this dehacked WAD and they can load it into their existing project when they're doing the map making and have everything sorted for them. And because the dehacked lump is basically just a tiny text file, it's really, really handy if you're using cloud-based services between your different project members, because you can update your dehacked WAD and have it on, like a Dropbox or like some kind of shared cloud service drive. And it's only a couple of bytes because it's a text file, but it will update every single user's project with the new deco code that you've written. And remember, when you're doing your DecoHack editing in the editor, you can patch directly into that WAD. So you just go into the build project and dehacked WAD, and same thing, dehacked WAD. And now when you're doing your updating here, you're updating it straight into that dehacked.wad file, which again, you can share with people. And remember, because we added into the do all function itself our own make WAD, any other time you do a do make, it's still going to update that WAD file. That dehacked only WAD is still going to be updated. So it's completely integrated into the normal do make build functions. But anyway, that's just a little trick that I do. And it also teaches you a little bit about how the scripting works in the do make builds. Okay, well, that's about that. I'm pretty sure I covered everything I wanted to cover. And again, this isn't really a tutorial about how to use DecoHack as a programming. It's more about how to integrate it in with your Ultimate Doom Builder and your doommake project. And I think I've covered everything. Probably the next tutorial I'm going to do might be an extension of this, where I create some actual DecoHack monsters. And what I'll do is I'll make a WAD and I'll go to the MBF21 project and find a public open source sprite set, and I'll show you the creation of an actual working monster inside Doom using DecoHack. But I just think this tutorial is long enough and it's a bit out of the purview of what this tutorial is trying to do. And I also still want to do one on how to write custom batch files as well. So there's still a bit more to do. If you want any more information on Doom Tools, or if there's any tutorials you'd like to see, you can of course ask me to do it. And I will see you guys next time.